Live from SABC headquarters in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Welcome to this evening's episode of The Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvogo. On the show tonight,
now I wish to introduce a person who I believe is fit and proper to become the new National Commissioner of Police, and that is General Masemola.
Proper person is our guest this evening. Newly appointed National Police Commissioner General Masemola opens up about himself, but more importantly, about his work. Sticking to matters of the justice system, we'll be looking at those interviews currently taking place where the Judicial Services Commission is interviewing prospective judges of the Constitutional Court. That and more coming up on tonight's episode of The Watchdog, which starts right now. Well, from the time President Cyril Ramaphosa appointed him last week, virtually everyone who had something to say about their encounters with General Masemola had nothing but good things to say about him. But tonight, we're talking about his plan for policing in South Africa, but also we try to get him to know him a little bit more. General, good evening. Thank you very much for your time. Pity, because of matters beyond our control, you couldn't come into studio. But congratulations and thank you very much for agreeing to come on the program this evening.
Thanks and good evening for you and your viewers. Thank you.
A poison chalice. That's how some people see the job that you've just been appointed to. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, I know that it is described like that with you, and I'm here to do my best to give it the best of what I have, of course, together with the management team of the South African Police Service.
From what the president said on the day he announced your appointment, you went through a grueling interview process. Well, at least from the impression that he gave us on the day. Was it a tough interviewing process? General, can you hear me? Welcome back, and if you just joined us, we are in conversation with General Masemola, who was appointed last week by President Cyril Ramaphosa. And from the day the president announced the appointment, virtually everyone was come on this platform, but also on numerous other platforms. Everyone who has had something to say about General Masemola has had good things to say about his personality, about his work ethic. Our focus this evening, however, is on his ideas, his thoughts, his plans, his priorities. General, I'm hoping that the line is going to hold this time around. What I was asking before we got cut off, or technology failed us, was what was it about that interview process that was particularly grueling?
Thanks, Vuyo. I was saying the interview process was quite grueling. The type of questions they were asking, well, of course, they were asking work-related questions that relates to policing, and especially that relates to the country, safety at large. And yeah, it was a tough one. It was really tough, I must say. It was indeed very difficult because they would ask you coming from the angle of economic security, gender-based violence, and it was quite, the interview was quite tough, yes.
Well, the impression the president gave us was that you passed. You nailed it. Basically, were you approached, or did you raise your hand and say, "I'm available"?
Yeah, from what I understood, we were all approached at my level. All the lieutenant generals in the SAPS were all approached. That's what I understood.
Mm-hmm. Would you have raised your hand if you hadn't been approached?
Yeah, when they invited us to apply, we all applied, and then from there we were invited for interviews. But I wouldn't know how many were interviewed, but I had President saying there were 5 of us who were shortlisted to go through the interview process.
Which of your previous roles would you say particularly prepared you for the role of the National Police Commissioner?
It will start quite far back, Will. I've been working in the operational environment most of my career, and after the 1994 in KwaZulu-Natal, when the violence was at its highest, I worked in that province, and I managed to stabilize the violence that has been there during a number of elections. And I can go back as far as during the parade in Western Cape. I was the first one to deploy there, and I deployed quite very long to stabilize Western Cape during that time. And from there, I spent almost 10 years in KwaZulu-Natal as a deputy provincial commissioner. So that also assisted me to know the diversity of policing from various angles. And I worked in each province, like deploying might be 3 weeks or a month or 2 months. And I've been there quite in areas including Gauteng. I worked from the head office in Pretoria through various management positions. And in terms of crime fighting, I was involved in majority of the operations where we were fighting crime, be it faction fight, be it CIT. And also when it comes to managing events, as far as I was still the Deputy Provincial Commissioner, I was responsible for managing a lot of major events. You can talk about Peace Conference, the AU Conference, the Conference on Racism, and quite a number of them, the elections in the country. And I was also chairing the body called, the NAT Joints, which is responsible for all security operations in South Africa with other departments, and it's quite interdepartmental. And also recently when we had this pandemic, the COVID-19, I was responsible also there to chair the body that was developing strategies and policies to advise the National Command Council. So yes, I think that on its own prepared me for a lot of the challenges, and I was involved in administrative duties also. So I think, yeah, I do have that experience.
Let's get to the tasks at hand. I mean, you don't need me to tell you that the crime statistics are just staggering, frightening, in fact. I mean, we're talking about, you know, more than 11,000 rapes in this country, and that's just reported rapes between October and December. You know, we're talking about 902 women murdered between October and December. Now, where do you even begin to turn the situation around?
I believe that me and my management team, we will go into a planning session soon and we'll come out with a plan that will put forward, consult quite a lot of role players. We will do consultation. And I think through that plan, that will focus on the priorities that are currently at stake in the country. We will definitely be able to we will focus mostly on areas like you're getting our communities closer to us, making sure that we resource our police station, because police stations are our front line. When you talk about SAPS, you do not talk about me as a national commissioner. SAPS is the 1 or 2 constables that are driving the van. That is the people that are representing us to the communities. So our plan is to make sure that we resource those police members they don't really need too much resources. All they need is they need to have the technology. They need to have vehicles that drive to take them where they're supposed to attend complaints. That will be our focus, just to try and boost their morale. Of course, also programs that, in terms of programs related to social services to members, and make sure that they are happy. Myself and the management team will strive to make sure that our main objective is to keep the frontline members happy, and I'm sure we'll be able to win the current problems that are facing the country, including the gender-based violence that talk about. Yes, 11,000 or over 11,000 rapes, 3 months is a lot. But of course, we need the society at large to assist us, because also almost half of those were raped in places where they stay, and surely you cannot get police in those houses. But we know that there are areas that we need to focus on, like the sale of liquor substances. We clamp on drugs because they do contribute, and also the matters around liquor, closing times of liquor premises, because some get raped either there or on the way from those taverns. So we'll focus in those areas, and of course make sure that when these victims of this gender-based violence get to police stations, they should be welcomed and assisted by trained police officials who are knowledgeable and who have got at least a feeling for them. And of course, at the same time, we'll ensure that both the detective arm of the police is strengthened in terms of numbers and resources like your IT and attaining vehicles, so that the investigation of cases does not become a problem for the detective. They should not go to attempt to investigate cases because of lack of resources. They should be out there and doing that, but at the same time, getting the management level, supervisory level also focused. That we'll do by move around the country and talk to those supervisory level management with a view to motivate them to be able to do their work.
General, I mean, as you are going through, I mean, some of the things you're going to need, including those you say perhaps you don't need, much of. Did you at any point or at any stage during the recruitment processes, during the interview or interviews that you had, in your conversations with the president and the Minister of Police, did you at any point get to put on the table your own demands? In other words, the things you are going to need for you to be able to succeed. Have you gotten that opportunity so far?
Yes, Rio, I did get that opportunity. What we need as the organization, as SAPS, we need numbers, who's on the ground. And now, yes, the president, as you are aware, announced that we will have 12,000. So currently we have started with the recruitment. 10,000 will be in from this week onwards on the training. So we do need numbers, and we do need, of course, money, budget to buy other important tools like your IT, because we cannot only rely on the boots on the ground. We need to multiply it, the boots on the ground, through the use of IT, so that we can be able to focus on our priorities.
Did you get an undertaking from your political principals that those resources will indeed be forthcoming? Because by the president's own admission last week, when he appeared before the Human Rights Commission, he actually alluded to problems, flaws in the way, that the budgetary process or cycle actually goes. So did they make an undertaking to you that those problems will indeed be resolved, and you will get the resources that you need?
Yeah, no, indeed, by giving us the current, this 12,000, you should know that this is history that we recruit such a large number. Of course, taking into account that the last 2 years, we never have people, new entries as a result of the pandemic that we had, but we would normally every year train about 2,000 or so, just about 2,000. But this time at least, we can say we have almost more than 5,000 extra. So that is an indication of willingness and commitment by the President and the Cabinet, and we are quite happy for that. And we will definitely make sure that we not only wait for that, as I said, we also get them resources so that when they finish training, there are tools of trade that they can use to do the work.
Well, one of the reasons, the observers say that, our successive national police commissioners have not been able to do their work, and most of them have had to, leave before their contracts expired, was political interference, relations between the National Police Commissioner and their command with, the political principals, whether it's the president or the minister or both. Did you at all in your conversations with your political principals touch on that and the importance of that relationship?
We did discuss that with my principal, and he does his work and I do my work, and there is no, up to so far, I haven't seen any problem. And even before my appointment, I've worked with quite a number of ministers doing my work. Of course, yes, I was not yet by that time the National Commissioner, but currently, again, I don't foresee a problem as long as my work is cut straightforward. That of the South African Police Service is cut straightforward in the Constitution as to what is expected of me, and the minister is responsible for policing policy, and of course, I do the work under his direction. It will be remiss of me. I won't expect the minister. I'm sure even the society at large, South Africa, don't expect the Minister of Police to talk something about forest or fisheries or maybe issues of agriculture. He will talk about policing matters, which we are all in business in these policing matters. I do not foresee a problem at this stage, and because we are in one business. Our business is to secure the South Africans.
Before your appointment, how well did you know the police minister? Did you have a relationship with him at all?
Our relationship is work-based. Like you can go far back as I think I worked with Minister Ntetwa, I worked with Minister Balula, I worked with Minister Kleko, I worked with this current minister. So our relationship is work-based. That is all.
You spoke also about the morale of the police. What, in your view, has contributed to to this situation? What are the men and women in blue unhappy about?
Well, I think from my side, what I see as a problem is that one of the main stumbling blocks from what makes the men and women in blue's morale to be low is the constant or now and then deficient in terms of resources or vehicles. They will spend time in garage, or they are adequately unmarked. You know, those small things. I've been a constable. I know how it feels to arrive at work. You are committed to work, and there is no vehicle to take you from point A to B to attend to a complaint. And when you get your complaint late, the fault is not that of management of not giving you a car, but it is your fault. So I know that how it feels, and that do demotivate members a lot. But also, yes, what happened in the country over a couple of years, let's say 10 years ago, obviously, in a way, will affect the police members. As you know, police members, they come from the society, so they all live in society. They see what is happening in the country. But I'm sure we can be able to improve on that situation and motivate them, get them resources, give them direction, and I'm sure we'll win as an organization.
What is the problem? Is the problem about money? In other words, there's no money to repair vans, for example, or it takes time to, repair them, or the system works such that, it's not agile. There's a lot of tardiness. Have you been able to put a finger on it as to why, at the end of the day, police end up feeling or being demotivated and feeling like they're not being appreciated, and the problems of the system are actually made to be seen to be their problems? They are either being inefficient or they are being lazy or whatever the allegation may be. Have you been able to put a finger on it as to what exactly is the problem?
Yeah, no, the police members are not at all lazy. They are out there, very committed people. And as I said, yes, some of the systems are a problem, especially system around the repair and servicing of vehicles. Me and you knows that if you want to service your vehicle now at the retail dealers, you'll take your vehicle in the morning and you'll get it back in the afternoon for an oil service, for example. because it's very minute things that needs to be done, change of few things. But currently for SABS to do the same service, it will take you at least 4 or 5 days. Currently a windscreen will take you a day. You are in and out. Probably don't drive it for a few hours, but now in SABS it will take you at least 3 days to just get a windscreen.
Why is that?
Those are the areas that I want to go and tackle and
why is that?
make those systems to be. What is the type of system currently that are there for you? Currently, one of the areas that we will tackle and correct is that you cannot have a provincial commissioner sitting, for example, in Eastern Cape, and the person that will give authority for the repair of the vehicle is sitting in Pretoria. So that we're going to change. Each provincial commissioner must be responsible for the repair of his or her own vehicle in the province so that they can take accountability. The budget is sitting there. Vehicles should be repaired at the local level and they'll be able to take accountability. Because currently they are managing something that is halfly managed somewhere else.
What I mean, there's other problems, that we come across from time to time. Forensic reports, they take time. Fingerprint reports, DNA reports. Have you been able to sort of put a finger on those as well as to why there are such delays? Because, of course, I mean, at the end of the day, they are like impact on the public's perceptions of the police and whether you are able to, do things and solve cases on time.
Yeah, we are some of those areas. That's what we are going to attend to. But thanks for the Minister of Police, the DNA backlog. I think he personally put a lot of effort in reducing that himself. It's quite quite a big improvement that has been done in that regard. There was a lot of systems, machines that were not being maintained or contracted expired. That has been rectified, and I think we'll see a big improvement in terms of the turnaround time for the DNA. Yes, we still have a problem around areas of IT, as you are aware, even in terms of the firearm licensing. We are still doing a paper system, which we want to change to move into an IT system so that the process can be smooth for members of the public to apply. When they have applied for the license, it will be easy to have the system working much more proper. So we are attending to those areas to ensure that the work becomes much more easier, and where there are no contracts, let's put contracts in place and have the work flow.
People who have been looking at, the July unrest say that among the big problems was the inability of crime intelligence to do this job. In fact, some go further to even say that crime intelligence is probably SAPS's weakest link or Achilles heel. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yes, it is a weak link, but it's not to say it is not there at all. They do provide intelligence, but we can be much more better and we can be much more effective, better than what we are currently. Our priority now will be to fill up those vacancies that are there within crime intelligence. And one area that I mentioned to management, which we still need to look at and finalize, is to look at making sure that we decentralize as far as possible in terms of crime intelligence, having the crime intelligence as far as up to station level, because crime is happening at the local level and at what place. So we need to have tentacles in that environment. Indeed, yes, it will improve in that area of crime intelligence.
There's a tweet here, General. I think it came through as we're talking about police morale and so on. You have Lipapang saying, "I would like you to ask the National Commissioner how he is going to handle the promotion around lower ranks like sergeant to warrant and constable to sergeant, and the issue of increasing the notch in subs as a while as I don't see any changes."
With regard to, those are some of the areas that we look at in terms of improving the morale of members. Currently, there are policies in place, and I will not say now that we are going to change them, but we will look at those policies together with the relevant directorate, HRM and finance, and see how we can improve those policies together. Of course, we consult the labor unions and see how far we can improve the morale of members in that area.
Zakaria Ditupe says, "Good evening. Minister Cele likes to go up and down with the police members and be visible everywhere. Is General Masemola going to do the same and be visible in the operations with the police members?"
As I'm appointed National Commissioner of Police, yes, I'll be found where police are. And, there is nothing wrong in going with the police because that's the work that I'm appointed for. Definitely, yes, I would love to not lose touch with the members. I will continuously be with them on the ground because that's when you will know better. You know better if you interact with police members on the ground than staying aloof here at home.
General, we often see whether it's I've seen this at funerals, I've seen this, during ceremonies when. I know that whenever we watch these scenes, we laugh about them. I'm just keen to know how a police, chief feels when you see scenes like these. I don't know if you can see what we are playing right now.
Yeah, no, thanks, Vio. I do see what's happening. In terms of federal, it happened. I know it happened once in somewhere in the federal in Soweto. But here, surely, what you are seeing now, Vio, is the reservist members that were probably practicing doing some drill. I'm sure you have heard, Vio, that I said, in terms of refresher training, you cannot train a police once and you leave him forever. We are going to introduce refresher training. They are currently happening now, but quite at a low pace. We are going to decentralize in-service training to the lowest level. I can give an example. Maybe you take 5 stations, you create a capacity, establish a capacity to do in-service training. It will be in terms of, let's say, theory, that is your law and policies.
I hear you, General, with regard to, reservists and perhaps, levels lower down. But, a disturbing one was where I think it was the funeral of Ndate Maponya. These were senior officers, but they were going in different directions. No one seemed to know what exactly was going on. One would have thought that in such instances, these are people who have been around for quite a while, so such mistakes shouldn't really happen.
Yes, such mistakes happen as a result of lack of in-service training, as I said. If we do it once in 5 years, then the results will be that what we've seen. But if we do in-service training regularly, that will assist us a lot, including also reducing the killing of police, because they will be doing service training at the localized level, at least once a week. Then they will always be in a good form and they'll remember everything. So those are the things that we are going to do. And that also boosts their confidence so that they can be able to do their work effectively.
But lastly, General, various analysts have spoken or sort of looked at the problems of policing, what needs to happen, who should do what, and so on. And there seems to be consensus around certain things. One of them is that there's no lack of information, research about where the problems lie, what the problems are, and how to deal with them. But what often happens is that these reports don't get taken seriously, or when reports are submitted, like your Marikana, after the Marikana inquiry, for example, things or recommendations don't get implemented. Lots of reports are gathering dust in people's offices. Are you going to dust these reports off and begin to implement the things that everybody agrees are the things that need to be done? Or going back to what you said right at the beginning, you and your team are going to start from scratch and reinvent the wheel, so to speak. How are you going to proceed?
What we will do, what we are already doing is, yes, we have been looking at such reports continuously with a view to implement, but sometime with limited budget we couldn't, but we remember that one of the areas reflected was that we need to increase the capacity of POP, and recently I'm sure you have heard I made an announcement that with the current intake that is here, we are going to increase the numbers of POP. It's one of those matters that has been reflected in one of those reports, so that we increase the numbers and buy them also tools so that we implement the recommendations of those, be it the Falam or panel of experts or the recent panel of the July 27th. We are going to establish a team and then work on an action plan and say, out of those that we have done, there are those that are still maybe outstanding, that are long-term to medium-term, but required money, and we will slowly make sure that we finalize everything of those reports.
General, let me thank you for your time this evening. Really appreciate it, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thanks to you, Leo, and your viewers. Thank you very much.
Our new National Police Commissioner there, sharing his views, ideas, but also tracing his that interview process, how he got to be appointed. Well, we'll all be watching. We wish him the best indeed, because our country doesn't deserve the kinds of crime levels that we have right now. Now, some of the country's top jurists are currently being interviewed for 2 vacant positions at the Constitutional Court. We'll look at that, but also what it means for the Judicial Services Commission, which recently has been criticized, or at least some members or commissioners have been criticized for the way they conduct themselves during these interviews. We'll look at that in a moment. Staying with the criminal justice theme, but talking now about appointments of a different kind. Some of the country's top jurists are currently being interviewed for the 2 vacant positions at the Constitutional Court. The candidates are appearing before the Judicial Services Commission. Chief Justice Raymond Zondo is chairing the sessions. The judicial system, an integral part, of course, of the country's democracy, and the appointment of suitable judges to all courts is a crucial task. Of the shortlisted candidates, 4 have been interviewed for the posts before. The JSC will also interview candidates for other judicial vacancies in the seven of the country's provinces. Well, let's get our panel to just, from what we have seen so far, to tell us just what they have observed. Of course, this process, Dan Mafora, if I may start with you, coming on the back of criticism leveled at the JSC for the way they conducted interviews for the position of Chief Justice. From what you have seen so far, has anything changed? Have people learned some lessons?
Good evening, Vuyo. Thank you so much for having me. I think that, it's important to kind of contextualize the interviews that started today. As you've just mentioned, that 4 of the 5 candidates that were interviewed today have been previously interviewed. And what the JSC did, which I thought was a very good initiative on their part, is they have had transcripts of the most recent interviews produced and given to the commissioners, so as to kind of limit, the temptation of rehashing matters that were dealt with in the past, that have been put before the commission. And so I think that today's performance or today's interviews are reflective, are quite unique in a sense, in that this is the 3rd time these candidates are being interviewed in a space of 12 months, as opposed to, a fresh batch of interviewees that the commission is seeing for the first time. I think it is interesting to note that Judge Rogers, who was being interviewed for the first time, out of this cohort of candidates, did have a longer interview than I think the 3 other candidates. And so there is a sense in which today's interviews were most likely going to be mellow and kind of calm. But I think it will be important to look at what happens from tomorrow onwards to see if, the JC has actually learned its lessons, as you've just said.
Your observations, Zukwana Ndlebe?
Well, as Dan Mafora has
okay.
If you consider the interviews that took place in April last year. So the interviews were a bit smooth, and I think that can be attributed to the fact that the JSC did have a meeting yesterday to discuss its mandate, and we heard Justice Zondo reiterate that there is a criteria that the JSC has confirmed it will be using during these interviews. And we've seen the commissioners try to stick to the criteria and ensure that they ask questions that are relevant to all the candidates. And as Dan has already said, the candidates that appeared before the JSC today, 4 of them have already appeared. They appeared in April last year, they appeared in October, and it was only Judge Rogers who appeared before the JSC for the first time for a Concord interview. So we have to wait and see how the week plays out, because things might change. The JSC is a bit unpredictable, but we're hoping that we will not see anything negative attributed to the JSC.
Then, Zukwana talks about, criteria and how the Chief Justice, Raymond Zondo, reminded the commissioners that there is a criteria, which I wanted to take us back to, in fact, the value in having these hearings conducted in public.
Right. I think the issue of a criteria is an important one, and something that Judges Matter, which is Zukana's organization, has been championing for a long time. I think that the JSC's revival of this document that details the criteria from 2010 is quite an important milestone, because what it shows is that the JSC is aware that the most recent interviews for the Chief Justice, and maybe we can even go back to April 2021, did kind of show that the JSC was not mindful in carrying out its constitutional function of what it was actually supposed to do. And so what having a publicly available criteria does is it allows us as the public to gauge the performance of these candidates against what is written in that criteria, and to see whether or not the JSC itself is living up to what is expected of it. Are they asking questions that speak to the qualities that these judges are supposed to have, or are the questions irrelevant? Are they strictly speaking, not necessary for the kinds of jobs that these candidates are applying for? And so it is an encouraging step. Of course, the 2010 criteria itself is not particularly detailed in any kind of way, and so it would have been nice to have a little bit more elaboration on what these qualities are. But certainly, I think that what we saw today, and in particular, Chief Justice Zondo reiterating that, we're here to see if you meet the criteria, I think that's an important and an encouraging step.
Skona, what in your view, in your organization's view, was responsible for things going awry? Was it because people were ignorant, didn't know that there was a criteria, or never really paid attention? Or was it people just doing, or pursuing agendas, for lack of a better word?
What we witnessed as Judges Matter was that the JSC was merely applying Section 174 of the Constitution and considering whether a candidate is appropriately qualified, fit and proper. And then one of the important things that the JSC emphasized on during its interviews previously was the issue of transformation. You would find that in each and every interview, a candidate is grilled on the issue of transformation to an extent that we thought at some point it was just unnecessary, But the Mohammed guidelines, which is the criteria that Chief Justice Zondo spoke about today during the interviews, they were implemented in 2010. So the Mohammed guidelines have been there since 2010, and former Chief Justice Mohammed, when these guidelines were put together, the purpose of them was to ensure that the JSC does look at Section 174, but there are other factors that are added onto Section 174. But when we considered the JSC's interviewing style and the process, we found that the additional set of criteria that are articulated in these guidelines was not implemented. So it's not as if these guidelines or the criteria was not there. It has always been there, but it was not being followed by the JSC. So it will be very interesting to see during this week whether the JSC will stick to these guidelines, to this criteria that has been, that the Chief Justice has said it will follow throughout the interviewing process. But as Dan has already said as well, the criteria, it's important to have a criteria, but we also need to consider other factors such as, for example, the Mohammed guideline says that a candidate's appointment should have some form of symbolism. What message will be given to the community at large by a particular appointment? That, in a way, does speak to the issue of transformation, which speaks to Section 174.2 of the Constitution. So there's still some work that has to be done when it comes to the criteria that the JSC is implementing currently. And then just to add on this, it's great that the JSC has decided to have a set criteria that it's going to follow during interviews, but the JSC also still needs to have a code of conduct for commissioners, which will set out how commissioners will conduct themselves during the interviews. And they also need to have a rules of procedure document, which will set out what is acceptable during the JSC interviews. Yes, there's a criteria, but some commissioners will cross a line at some point, and we hope that does not happen during these interviews. And if there are rules of procedure in place, we hope that this is something that never has to happen again in the future. But we are glad that there is a criteria. Work still needs to be done on this criteria, but the JSC still needs to have a code of conduct for commissioners, and it still needs to have rules of procedure in place, and these have to be in writing.
We're going to end it there. Special thanks to both of you, Skona Ndlebe from Judges Matter and Dan Mafora from the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution. And that's our show for this evening. Do join us again tomorrow night, 8 p.m. sharp. Have a good night.